Jerusalem, AD 1119. 9 men stood in the ruins of a stable beneath the Al-Aqsa Mosque, on ground the Crusaders believe had once held the Temple of Solomon. They had no money. They had no reputation. They had a mission that sounded like a joke to the men who actually ran the city. Protect every pilgrim on the road from Jaffa to Jerusalem, a road so dangerous that bandits picked off travelers within sight of the city walls. 9 nights, 1 road, an empire's worth of ambition. This is not the story of mystical treasure hunters or secret guardians of ancient relics. Strip away the legend built by novelists and conspiracy theorists, and what's left is something more interesting. A small military brotherhood that accidentally invented international finance, became the most powerful private organization in medieval Europe, and was destroyed in a single dawn raid by a king who owed them money he could never repay. They didn't fall because they failed. They fell because they succeeded too well for too long in front of the wrong king. The First Crusade had captured Jerusalem in 1099, 20 years before our 9 knights took their vows. That conquest created a new industry overnight: pilgrimage. Tens of thousands of Christians from France, Germany, Italy, and England wanted to walk the same streets Christ had walked. The problem was getting there alive. The road from the coast up to Jerusalem ran through narrow passes where a pilgrim caravan could be ambushed by local raiders in minutes. Chroniclers of the period describe pilgrims found dead in ditches, throats cut for the coins sewn into their cloaks. The Kingdom of Jerusalem, barely 20 years old, didn't have the manpower to patrol every mile of road between every holy site. A French nobleman named Hugues de Payens saw the gap and did something almost nobody in his position had done before. He proposed a permanent, standing order of monks who fought. Not knights who occasionally prayed. Not monks who occasionally prayed. Not monks who occasionally picked up a sword. A genuinely new category of man, bound by monastic vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, but trained and equipped for war. King Baldwin II of Jerusalem gave them a headquarters, a wing of his own palace, built on top of what was believed to be the Temple Mount. That's where the name came from. The poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon. The Templars. For 9 years, by most accounts, they stayed poor. Their seal, later famous, showed 2 knights riding a single horse, a visual joke about how broke the founding brothers actually were. Poverty wasn't going to build an empire. What changed everything was a single church council and one very persuasive letter. In 1129, at the Council of Troyes in France, the Templars secured official church endorsement. And backing that endorsement was a document written by Bernard of Clairvaux, the most influential religious voice in Western Europe at the time, a man who could make or break careers, wars, and entire monastic movements with a single sermon. Bernard wrote a text called In Praise of the New Knighthood, and it did something remarkably effective. It solved a theological problem that had bothered Christian knights for a century. How do you kill a man and still call yourself righteous? Bernard's answer was blunt. If you kill a pagan in defense of Christendom, you're not committing murder. You're removing evil from the world. He called it molaycide, not homicide. That single reframing turned violence into virtue for an entire generation of European nobility. Suddenly, joining the Templars wasn't just acceptable. It was a fast track to salvation for men whose entire lives had been built around fighting. Donations followed the endorsement. Land in France, land in England, land in Spain and Portugal, where Christian kings were fighting their own long war against Muslim rule. Within 20 years of Troyes, the Templars held property across nearly every kingdom in Western Europe, not because they conquered it, but because nobles gave it to them, sometimes out of genuine piety, sometimes because a dying man wanted the order's prayers said over his grave for eternity, and land was the currency of eternity. Here's the part the treasure-hunting documentaries skip past, and it's the part that actually mattered. A nobleman in Champagne wanted to travel to Jerusalem. Carrying gold across 2,000 miles of road, through mountain passes and pirate-infested sea lanes, was a death sentence waiting to happen. But the Templars had houses, commanderies, dotted along nearly every pilgrimage route in Europe and the Levant. So a system developed. The nobleman would deposit his gold at a Templar house in France and receive a letter of credit, a coded document verifying the deposit. He'd carry nothing but that letter across the continent. When he reached a Templar house in Jerusalem, he'd present the letter and withdraw the equivalent value, minus a fee for the service. It was not magic. It was not mystical. It was double-entry bookkeeping and a trusted network of fortified branch offices stretching from London to Acre. But in the 12th century, nobody else in Europe could offer it at that scale, with that level of security, backed by an organization answerable only to the Pope himself, not to any king, not to any local lord. That last detail mattered more than anything, because the Templars answered to Rome and not to national crowns. Kings couldn't simply seize Templar assets on a whim the way they could tax or confiscate from their own nobility. That made Templar houses the safest deposit boxes in Europe. Kings themselves started using them. The French crown parked its royal treasury inside the Paris Temple for years at a stretch. English kings borrowed from Templar coffers to fund wars. They weren't just soldiers anymore. They were becoming the central bank of Christendom, and almost nobody had voted for that, too.